Happy Halloween, everyone! Here's a book about a child who's a serial killer.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
This review was commissioned through Patreon. Christine Penmark's life was ruined on the day of the Fern Grammar School picnic. Her 10-year-old daughter Rhoda is a slow, methodical child. Rhoda's upset because the school gave a penmanship medal to Claude Daigle. Rhoda thinks she should have won the medal. On the way out of the building, they have a run-in with Leroy Jessup, the janitor. Leroy constantly complains about how terrible his life is. He thinks he's so much better than everyone else, definitely smarter than these rich people. He sprays them with a hose and pretends it's an accident. Rhoda's the only one who's not fooled by this. I know the murdering child is supposed to be the scary character in this book, but I find Leroy to be the disturbing one, because he swears constantly he has rape fantasies about all the women in the apartment building, and he's ridiculously obsessed with this little girl. I'm also disturbed by the neighbor, Monica Breedlove. Monica's supposed to be a kindly older woman who's well-to-do and practically runs the town. Monica psychoanalyzes everyone and everything in a sexual fashion. Like she'll have a normal conversation about a painting, and then she starts talking about incest and certain body parts. It's out of place and perverted. Monica throws a party, which is interrupted by the news that Claude Daigle was just found dead. He drowned at a wharf, his body was covered with bruises, and his medal is nowhere to be seen. A week later, Rhoda is unceremoniously kicked out of school. When Christine asks why, the three teachers say Rhoda harassed Claude all day long, demanding to have the medal. Rhoda shoved him and tried to steal it. He ran into the off-limits wharf area just to get away from her. She chased him, and that's the last time anyone saw him alive. When questioned, Rhoda lied about everything, including the things she did in front of dozens of people. I'm amazed the investigation ended there. I would have told the police, or at least I would have demanded an explanation from Rhoda about what happened when she was alone with the victim at the murder scene an hour before his death was discovered. But no, the teachers dropped the investigation there, deciding the death was an accident, even though the victim was clearly beaten before he died. Monica has another trashy party. She asks Christine to show up in high heels and stockings so her brother will sexually harass her instead of the other guests. You know, if someone asked me to come to a party so their relative could sexually harass me as a distraction, I would never talk to that person again. Christine remembers last year when Rhoda's babysitter died under mysterious circumstances. After promising to give Rhoda a crystal ball, she was found dead at the bottom of the stairs. Rhoda says the woman was going outside to help a cat, but her relatives quickly contradict this story. The victim hated cats and would never go outside to help one. Again, that's a terrible place to end the investigation. The only witness was caught lying about what happened, and you close the case instead of asking any follow-up questions? Christine finds the lost medal among Rhoda's things. She asks Rhoda what happened on the day of Claude's death. Rhoda lies and changes her story a lot, which is a huge clue she's making things up. She claims she paid Claude 50 cents for the medal. We're halfway through the book at this point. A whole lot of nothing happens in the second half. Christine writes several letters to her husband, which never get sent. She visits the crime scene. She talks to Monica. Leroy regularly taunts Rhoda, saying he knows she's the killer. Granted, she is the killer, but it's still a weird decision for him to repeatedly accuse a child of murder just because he doesn't like the way the child looks. He brags he's gonna find the murder weapon, she's gonna get caught and executed. Leroy laughs himself sick over how much distress he's causing for this child. After 5 scenes of this, Rhoda decides to burn the murder weapon, which is her shoes. Christine catches her, and Rhoda finally confesses the truth of how she beat Claude repeatedly until he died. Christine researches serial killers who started killing when they were children. She comes across the tale of Bessie Denker, who killed 23 family members. Christine is shocked to realize she remembers many of these people. It turns out she is the serial killer's daughter. She didn't know that earlier because she was secretly adopted. Christine is horrified. She passed on the serial killer gene to her daughter. She carried the bad seed inside herself. Leroy taunts Rhoda some more, saying he knows the shoes are the murder weapon and he fished them out of the incinerator before they were burned. When Rhoda demands to have the shoes back, Leroy finally realizes that taunting a murderer is a bad idea. He gets scared and says the entire thing was a joke, but she doesn't believe him and demands to have the shoes. Leroy normally takes a nap in the basement every day, instead of working. Rhoda sets his bed on fire and bolts the door shut. He screams for help, and Rhoda quietly taunts him as he dies. Christine decides to kill herself and Rhoda. She tricks Rhoda into eating a bottle of sleeping pills, then commits suicide with a gun. Monica just happens to visit that night, so she saves Rhoda just in time. Now Rhoda's reign of terror will probably continue. The end. Post-book follow-up. This is certainly a good horror book. A mild-mannered woman slowly realizes her daughter and mother are serial killers. That is a scary premise, made all the more terrifying by the author's use of psychology and real-life research. All the murder stories in the book are true, taken from real-life cases, except for the two that are central to the plot. I can appreciate the scary stuff. I can understand why they made several movies based on this book. But speaking personally, I did not like this book. The pacing is extremely slow. It's mostly about Christine worrying, going to parties, and talking to people who know nothing about the situation. The beginning is a good example of this. What has happened at the end of Chapter 2? Rhoda got dressed and got on the bus. That's it. When I was reading, I stopped and reflected that I was on page 50 and nothing had happened yet. Similarly, it takes Christine 100 pages to read the file about her mother, because she constantly stops, saying, "It's too scary, I don't want to read anymore." I dislike Christine because she's so weak-willed and rarely does anything. Even talking to her daughter seems to take extraordinary effort on her part. These personality traits make Christine a good victim for a horror book, but they also make her a terrible main character. The book takes place in 1952, it was written in 54. I'd say it's definitely a product of its time, with the focus on pop psychology, endless cocktail parties for people without jobs, and disturbing sexual dynamics. If the story was written today, it would be extremely different. You can still read it today and be scared, but don't expect it to be a fast-paced serial killer story. I give The Bad Seed a 2.5 out of 10.